Alright, what is going on YouTube? This is going to be a unique video, but I decided that it makes sense to take a look at where my casting is standing right now, kind of 2 years after I started, and also give an overview of which direction I think I should be going forward, what to improve in my casting. I do read comments, so whenever people come in with constructive criticism that is saying, hey, this and that could be done better this and that way, I'm trying to listen to the advice, consider those options. So I appreciate all the constructive criticism and feedback, and as up until now, I will also be open to like constructive and helpful criticism in the future as well related to my casting. So let's take a look at how things are nowadays. So what are the main points of criticism from what I've experienced from the viewers? One of the returning things was the too much zooming in and out and staying too much zoomed out for too long. So many people have issues with me being a little bit too far zoomed out, and they're just unable to see the screen or see the battles if they're watching on mobile phone or tablets. That's actually a pretty hard thing to balance, I believe, because you have to do two things. At first, you have to zoom in, indeed, into a battle so it's visible well for everybody. But also, if you zoom in very heavily, then you limit the vision, and oftentimes I might miss something because I have limited vision. So I will do my best to, in the future, zoom in a little bit more on things because I totally understand that criticism, and I do feel like, indeed, in smaller devices, it might be hard to see the battle, so it makes sense for me to zoom more in. The other thing is repeating words and expressions. That actually is something that has been a returning issue for me. At first, it was anyways, but it looks like the bigger issue for people was when I said that being said too much. It is sort of a concern for me as well. I noticed this talking myself. It's just hard to find transitions between sentences for myself. So if you've got recommendations on, hey, you could use this transition or that transition instead, I'm more than happy to read feedback related to that. But I totally agree with the fact that it could be a little bit repetitive for the viewers, or it could also be a little bit frustrating that, hey, he said the same phrase 20 seconds ago. I'm actually actively working on this, but this is pretty hard to eliminate from my speech. Synergy with co-casters. That is obviously depending on the situation. In some cases, many people have said that, it kind of feels like I'm arguing with my co-caster. I sort of disagree with that. But I get the main points of the criticism. So I do believe that indeed we need to do a better job, both me and the co-casters, at synergizing with each other. Because for a cast with someone else, it is requiring two casters. Both of the casters have to be kind of focusing on not interfering with the other, and that's actually very, very hard to do. And some of it comes with time, and some of it comes with chemistry with other casters. With some casters, this chemistry develops very, very fast. Some others, it takes more time to develop. So obviously, I also need to work a little bit more on making sure that I do not interfere with the co-caster as much as I do nowadays. I'm actually working towards that, and I think I've gotten better in that in the last like half a year or so. But I still need to do some work. The tricky part is that when you're casting with someone, when something is happening on the screen, you have a reflex that says, hey, I have to say this to the viewers. But that reflex might be there for the co-caster as well, and that means that the two of us will start speaking at the same time, resulting kind of in awkward conflicts or, talking when the other person is talking as well. So what I feel I should do is try to limit my speech when I'm actually with a co-caster and only highlight things that my co-caster is not actually highlighting himself, because that way it might limit the amount of interference between the two of us. Obviously, this depends, and it is different for each and every co-caster, but I do believe that I need to continue improving my synergy with co-casters. It has gotten better in the last like half a year or so, but it still needs some work to be done. Speak of lesser extremes, this is one of the things that I believe that I should do And I did try to work on this to a certain extent. I think I've gotten a tiny bit better with this, but it's not perfect. So, what I mean by speak of lesser extremes is when a player loses 25 villagers, let's say they are sort of almost dead. Their chance of winning the game is less than 5%. I shouldn't say, okay, it's GG. So, even if I feel it is, and even if the chance of a comeback is very, very low, I should try to limit my speech to saying lesser extremes. So I shouldn't say, yeah, this game is over. I should say it is possibly over. It's very likely to be over. So I need to sort of lower the level of confidence in what I'm saying. I shouldn't say, hey, it's guaranteed they lost. I should say, it is very likely they will lose if situation doesn't change. So this actually could be like this is something I'm actively working on, and I have gotten better at this to a certain extent, but I still need work to be done. The other group of stuff that I noted is the things that weren't really given as a feedback in comments. It was more like something that I felt while I was casting. So the first thing is slowing down speech, and that applies to even intense moments as well. One of the things I've noticed is that I'm often speaking too fast, and that sometimes makes it hard for people to understand the words I'm saying. I'm cutting off the ends of words, and I just need to do a better job at articulating and forming words. So instead of, oh, there is so many things happening on screen, I need to highlight the biggest moments instead of trying to just flood information as fast as possible when there is a lot of people happening, because that might be somewhat annoying for the viewers, so to say, and it also makes it harder for the viewers to understand my speech, or at least that's how I feel it, because oftentimes I like cut off ends of the words. It's hard to understand the words I'm saying because I'm speaking too fast, and that kind of hurts the way I articulate. Do not jump between different thoughts. This is one of my biggest mistakes currently, I believe. Oftentimes, I am talking about something and I just end the sentence at a random moment and start something completely different because at that moment I feel like that is more important. That's something I need to stop doing, because I definitely feel like it's awkward and weird when I am like halfway in a certain thought or a certain sentence and then I start switching it to something completely different. And while that second thing I switch to may be more important, it still yields an awkward moment for the viewers, because they feel like, hey, he was talking about something completely different 5 seconds ago, and now he's in a different topic. The other thing is, do not be too harsh to players making mistakes. This is sort of a depends type of a thing for me. Sometimes I'm not too harsh, but sometimes I actually realize I am too harsh. There is nothing wrong with pointing out mistakes of players, because everybody makes mistakes. Like, I do mistakes casting. Players in the heat of the battle, in the heat of like tournament pressure whatsoever, they make mistakes as well. But what I need to work on is making sure that I do not overemphasize mistakes. I'm actually going to have an example here, although I'm not going to say the matchup. But during 2 polls, there was a moment where a team actually lost the game on a hole. And I said like 20 times in this set that they lost the game because of that. That shouldn't be a thing. It is important, and it is absolutely true that they probably lost the game because of that hole. But I shouldn't overemphasize it and mention it every 2 or 3 minutes, because that, I think, is not the way to go. So I need to point out mistakes, but I need to become better when it comes to like letting those mistakes go and just say, okay, this contributed to a thing, but let's not overemphasize such mistakes from players, because that's not what the main focus of the cast should be. So how do I plan to improve in these? Obviously, zooming is something that's, as I said, a little bit challenging for me, because if I zoom in too much, I might miss some other things happening on the battlefield or somewhere close to the battlefield, because the more zoomed in I am, the more limited field I'm actually able to look at. But because of this, I feel like it is more important for me, especially now that we Capture Age, that we have a rewind feature, to focus on one thing happening at a time. And I shouldn't worry about, hey, there is something else happening, a different fight on the other side of the map. Let's look at this first, and then maybe we'll rewind the other fight and take a look at that as well. But I shouldn't be jumping in between things, and if I focus on one thing, that should allow me to zoom in a little bit more on that, because I'm not that obsessed with looking at other parts of the map. The other thing I noticed is that I should actually look at the minimap more often, because oftentimes the minimap helps a lot at finding critical points, critical battles, sneaky units whatsoever, and that could help a lot when I need to evaluate which place to go with the camera and which place to zoom into. So that's something that I need to improve on as well. And lastly, I think this is probably the biggest when it comes to like the speech, is that I need to take some breaks speaking. And that might feel awkward because, you know, when you're a caster, you're actually obliged to speak about things. But what I noticed is that I'm pretty much speaking without a single break, and that's probably quite bad overall, especially if my brain starts to become slower. I get tired. Like after 6 hours of casting, obviously my brain is much slower than at the beginning of the cast. So I often notice that I'm saying sentences right after each other, so there is like no awkward silence moments. But those sentences don't necessarily make sense. Well, they mostly do, but for example, when I said I shouldn't overemphasize mistakes on the players, I think by trying to speak a little bit less, that's one way to fix things. So I don't feel the urge to say something, and that something actually becomes me pointing out a mistake that has been pointed out 15 times before. Instead, I should, I think, try to take a bit longer break, so like 2 or 3 seconds between sentences or so, and just leave some of those slower moments of the cast, so to say, when there is just a moment for me to think over what I want to talk about next, and also sort of a mental rest for the viewers, so they're not flooded with information and just an endless flood of cast coming at them. Because even though don't know this for sure, it might be annoying for some viewers that there's the caster and he's just speaking and speaking and speaking and speaking and speaking. It might actually be good for some people if there is like smaller breaks. So it's like, okay, I'm going to say 3 sentences and then take a 2 or 3 5 seconds break in between the next thought, and that kind of slows down the pace of me casting, allows me to potentially think over what I want to say next. Do not jump between different thoughts, as I mentioned before. It also means that I do not need to just transition between thoughts and that frequently, and that probably results in words repeated way less than it is nowadays. So that's basically what I think I should work on and what I'm actually hoping to work on in the foreseeable future. Once again, I appreciate everybody who is giving constructive criticism and trying to help out at me becoming a better caster. If you have any thoughts on the matter, then feel free to let me know in the comments. If you feel like, hey, there is one thing or 2 things that I actually left out, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and we will actually try to figure something out to make sure that my casting is as enjoyable as it could possibly be. So thank you so much for watching, and I guess I will see you in one of my upcoming videos.